One of the very first things you learn about EIGRP, of course, those K values, the K weights, the metric weights, they've got to match. And they're viewable in show IP protocols. And here I've got a readout from router 2 and from router 1 in the same lab, or the same rack, I should say. Let me move that down just a tad. And the output can be slightly different as far as the formatting of it goes, but your EIGRP metric weights are going to be listed right there. And here we've got K1 set to 1, K3 set to 1, and K2, 4, and 5 are set to 0. Well, the metric weights, here's where they come in. This tells EIGRP, here's how much relative importance I want you to give a particular value when you're coming up with the route metrics. And knowing the K values in order, I think, is a good idea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bandwidth, load, delay, reliability, and MTU. Now, by default, EIGRP takes bandwidth and delay into consideration when calculating route metrics, and it ignores the other values. So that's why we had those two set to 1, K1 and K3, and just like the one on the board here, and 2, 4, and 5 set to 0. So we're telling EIGRP, I want you to take bandwidth bandwidth and delay into consideration and just ignore the others. Now, I'm always real world with you, I'm always blunt with you, but I'm going to be even more blunt with you than usual. You are much more likely to run into some kind of K-value mismatch in an exam or a lab environment than in a real-world network, because most networks use the default K values. I'm not saying they all do, and I'm not saying the ones that change them are wrong. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation or solution. The thing is, it's not something you're going to be changing on a regular basis. And you can change those values with the metric weights command. And we're going to change those. I'm going to bring router EIGRP 100 right back up. And let's look at this metric weights command. And we do have actually a hold down and a maximum hops. There are other metric commands, but we're just sticking with weights. And the first one we get, I love this. You're given a range of 0 to 8 for type of service, and only TOS 0 is supported. Therefore, that is the one you should pick. So we'll go with 0, and notice K1 is actually the second value that I'm entering, because I get this one all the time, and I think it really trips people up, because you learn that about EIGRP in the very beginning. Hey, I got five K values, and here are the ones we use by default, and here are the default settings, here's how you change them. And then when you go to the metric weights command, there are 6 numeric values, and you're like, wait a minute, why do I have 6 numbers in this config when I only have 5 K values? Well, the first one is your type of service, and that one's always going to be 0 as backed up by Cisco iOS here. So just for fun, we're going to just change one of the values, I think. I think we'll change bandwidth to a 2. Because you can change it up to 255. I'm not sure I recommend that, but let's see. So K3, and notice that the iOS is not telling me which value is which. It's not saying, hey, Chris, K1 is bandwidth. It's just saying, hey, Chris, what do you want to set K1 to? So again, you are going to have 6 values when you're done. The first one is going to be 0, and then that second number is actually your first K value. So, I just punch that in, and I immediately get all kinds of rude messages. Let's see, the metric, wow, yeah, this doesn't look good at all, does it? We got all kinds of dual neighbor changes, and man, these babies are coming up, and by the way, these are all from 123.2, or all involving 123.2, because when I took 123.3 out of the lab in the last video, the one for passive interface, I haven't brought it back in yet. So we're getting quite a few messages here. Now, obviously, I'm a big believer in the power of certification and the power of knowledge, but I'm pretty sure just about anybody could look at this debug output and see what the problem is. It is a K-value mismatch, by golly. So what I would suggest we do very quickly is set those values back. So let's go ahead and do that. And this is where I really like that up arrow key, because now I'm going to do Control A, move to the front, type in no, and when I negate that command, that change the values, it's going to send them back to the defaults. And my adjacency is now back up, and my phone has stopped ringing, and my pager's going off. And yes, I know we don't have pagers anymore, but you know what I mean. And now we're done. So you see very quickly that your K values do indeed have to match. It's a good idea, certainly, for your exam and for the real world to know why we use them, what the purpose of them is. I would certainly know the order of them, because you can see the iOS isn't even going to help us out with that. But again, it's not something you change on a daily basis. And here on the board, I show you one of the many messages that we received when that happened. I did this one on router 2, but you could see either way, we were going to get messages saying, hey, we've got a K-weight issue. We've got a mismatch. Know the command for your exam, and in the real world, unless you have an outstanding reason to do so and you've given it a lot of thought, just leave the K values alone. That is it for the K values. I'll see you on the next video.